Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. Today I'm covering The Undoing, Episode 3, Do No Harm. Oh, this is such a good series. I love it. I'm really enjoying it. I wish there were more than 6 episodes, but I'm also dying to figure out what the heck is going on here. Usually I have a pretty good sense. I read a lot of these thriller novels. I can usually guess what the twist is. This one's a little different for me. I haven't read the book, so I'm just going on the show, and I kind of love that I can't figure it out. I have some guesses, but I can't figure it out quite yet. So let's get into it. So this episode picks up, it starts off with a jolt. Do you remember at the end of the last episode, he shocked her. He came out of hiding and said, "Don't scream, don't call the cops." Well, she calls the cops. So at the beginning of this episode, he's hugging his son, and she's calling the cops, saying, "My husband, Jonathan Fraser, he's a fugitive. You need to get here." So we see him in the back of a cop car. He's trying to convince her, I didn't do it. Eleanor was obsessed with me. You've got to believe me. Something happened. So we see him then being taken off in a helicopter here. And Henry's watching through the window. It's heartbreaking. She's watching through the window. She ends up getting questioned more by the police. And Grace says, "Is there a reason you're not believing me?" And the police wants to know if she was afraid with the husband, coming at her like that, if she was afraid for her life. And she said she was terrified. They ask, "Did you think he might harm you? You thought he might try to kill you?" And she just doesn't understand. She said, "Why are you asking me this?" So this police officer, he has an interesting relationship with Grace. I can't tell what it is, but he seems to not know what to do with her, but he also seems to like her. I don't mean romantically. I mean, he seems to like her as a person. And he ends up telling her things like, he told her the DNA results came back and Elena's baby, that was his baby. They keep dropping these bombs on us. So he did have a baby. That little baby she was holding at the meeting, yeah, that was his baby. Grace is obviously distraught, just completely shocked. They keep dropping these bombs on us, and I kind of love it. I love that, they keep throwing these things at us. The other interesting thing is we mostly see things from Grace's point of view, but for a little bit we switch over to Jonathan's. We see him checking into jail, or he's checking in off the bus and going in. So it's weird that they keep switching back and forth, I guess, so we can see what's going on with him, but we really only get these quick glimpses of it. Meanwhile, back at her dad's house where they're staying, she and her son, Henry, are staying. Her son is watching the news coverage of the dad's, I don't know, it's not even a trial yet, investigation, the beginnings of a trial, that sort of thing. Grace is like, please turn it off. She just doesn't want to hear it right now. So we find out more interesting things here. Dad asks if he has a lawyer, and she has to explain he lost his job. He drained our bank accounts some, and he has to have a public defender. Oh my gosh, so much information, so much is happening. Meanwhile, the son goes to find the dad's picture, and, obviously he feels bad. He's missing him. He doesn't understand. But so much information. So he drained part of their bank account. It's interesting that, he's lost his job for 3 months. Where has he been going during those 3 months? That's what I want to know. What's happening there? Remember, her friend Sylvia from school is also an attorney. So she goes to see the arraignment, and she's kind of filling Grace in over the phone. So the friend explains, listen, he's got this public defender. He's called the Badger because he's not great, but he's good, and he'll badger people until he gets what he wants. They bring in Jonathan, and there's an interesting scene where he makes a lot of eye contact with Sylvia, the friend, and then we see Henry and Grandpa are watching the arraignment on TV. Then we go back into the jail where we see Jonathan going to bed. So again, I thought it was an interesting choice. No words were said. This doesn't really progress the story. It's just interesting to see Jonathan and how he's coping with jail, basically. So he gets pulled out the next day, and his attorney is talking to him. And Jonathan's saying, it's been a week. He tells the attorney he's innocent. He's trying to convince it. He's like, I'm innocent. Do you care? And the attorney says, no, not really. I actually prefer my client's guilty. That way it takes the pressure off. He then asks the attorney to arrange to see Grace. Jonathan wants to talk to Grace, so he's trying to get the attorney to get her there. So then we see her meeting up with the attorney in a bar. The attorney explains, his name's Robert. Robert explains that Jonathan really wants to meet with her. And then he says, your husband seems pretty convinced you'll vouch for his innocence. And she says, I won't. I can't. She's still in shock about learning that he has another baby. Attorney asks if her husband is the type of man that's capable of this type of mayhem. And he says, I think your husband's a bit of a dick, but he's not a killer. What do you think? And she's saying, I don't know what to think. There's a lot of quick scenes in this episode. They kind of jump around a little bit. So we see her then with her dad, and he's telling her, don't go near that son of a bitch. And she says, I owe it to Henry. So we see her, I think it's just to show us how she's kind of trying to understand things and maybe not changing her mind, but trying to decide whether or not she's going to help him, stand by him. Then we see Grace is sleeping. She's awoken by a noise. Of course, this happened before at the beach house, so she's panicked. She's thinking it's Jonathan again. But it's her son. It's Henry. He's upset. She holds him, and Henry's asking, do you think Dad did this? And she says, no, I don't think he did. So Grace walks out of her apartment, and the news people everywhere, they're asking for a comment, and she's upset. She doesn't know what to do with all. It's just overwhelming. So we see her get into this car, and it turns out she's going to the jail to visit with Jonathan. So Jonathan comes out, and she's livid. It's interesting to see this here. She's finally, she's realized that he's had this other whole life that she didn't know about. She doesn't know him. He thanks her for coming. How's Henry doing? And she says, how do you think he might be? And basically he says, listen, I'm not going to convince you that I'm not a good husband. I didn't say that right. I'm not going to convince you that I'm a good husband. I'm not. And she says, well, you have an effing daughter. And he says, look, I talked to you about this. Elena was just completely obsessed with me. She was not a well person. You have to help me. You know my heart. And she said, he says, I understand you can no longer trust me, but I could never take a human life. I didn't do it. And he's asking her to bring his son Henry to see him. Jonathan, I just don't know. I don't know what to do with this. He seems so convincing when he says he didn't do it. And maybe there's something there with Elena being obsessed with him. I have so many theories. I'm really curious. What do you guys think? Leave me a comment below. Do you think he did it? If you know the answer, we're good. We don't need the comment. But if you don't know the answer, what are your thoughts? What do you think he did it? Grace is really struggling. We see her in these scenes where she's having flashes of Elena and doesn't know what to do with it and freaking out. So she ends up going back to meet with that doctor friend that we saw in the last episode that was acting kind of weird. So she meets with him and says he's risking his job even talking to her. And he says, listen, he's not who we thought he was. What do you know about the victim? And they talk about she had a 7-year-old son who had a tumor. And the doctor explains, well, Jonathan wanted her. He was willing to risk everything to be with her. And she explains, well, he says she was obsessed with him. And was she the obsessive compulsive type? And the doctor explains, I don't know. Basically, he puts an interesting twist on things. He's saying, you've heard of the God complex with doctors. Well, he got it. it wasn't about the patient, it was about this God complex, about feeling so important and being at the center of things and feeling like he's cured people or whatever. So it's interesting to see that side as well. So then we see Elena's husband walking with the baby, and they're all on their way to pick up their kid. Their kids go to the same school. So he walks past her, and it's so weird. It's so weird to see. I feel for both of them. He's lost his wife. She doesn't know what's going on. I mean, goodness. Okay. So after she picks up the son, we see her again talking to her dad. She's trying to explain to the dad that maybe Elena was obsessed with him. Maybe she has hero worship or rescue romance syndrome, something where you fall in love with the person who you perceive as a hero or having saved you, or saved your child. Dad explains, well, she fell in love with a doctor who saved her kid's life. And Grace said, according to Jonathan, she took it to extremes. So Dad is not sure what to think, but he obviously is all for Grace. And he's like, so now you believe he's innocent? And Grace explains she's open to the idea. Dad asks, are you open to the idea of you guys getting back together? And Grace says, no, of course not. Well, then we get another bomb dropped on us. He came for me for money. So he tells Grace, he said you guys were worried about paying for Reardon and that you guys needed help. She was taken aback, completely blown away by this, had no idea. And she says, how much did you give him? $500,000. I thought I was helping you and Henry. He thought she was too proud to ask him. So he thought he was helping their family, and he gave Jonathan $500,000. So that explains how he got through the last 3 months of unemployment and paying for things, I guess. It's just so crazy. I want to point out an interesting scene here. They keep focusing on their hands. See this? They did that in the therapy session, too. She saw her patients hold hands in a certain way, and it kind of triggered her a little bit. And I wonder where are they going with that? What is that? They keep showing these hands things. It's just something I noticed. I'm going to put forth a theory. I'm probably wrong. And if you don't want to hear it, fast forward. But here's a weird thing I keep thinking. The dad had such a visceral reaction to Jonathan, right? When everything was fine, he had a reaction to him where they just didn't like each other. You could just tell they were not comfortable with each other. And now, just as Grace is saying, I think I might believe him, Dad drops this other bomb about him borrowing money. Do you think that that's real? Do you think he really borrowed the money? Do you think that the dad had something to do with it? I don't know. I find it interesting that they're putting all this in front of us right now, especially when Grace is starting to turn and say that maybe Jonathan's innocent. I don't know. So she takes her son to go see Jonathan, in jail, and it's just so emotional. The son wants to see Jonathan, but he's a kid. He's immature. He's emotional. He doesn't understand. He straight up asks the dad, did you kill her? And the dad doesn't even hesitate. He says, no. And then he says, were you blanking her? Were you? And he says, yes, we were romantically involved. So he says, you don't love Mom anymore. And he says, of course I do. I love her and you more than anything. Oh, how can you say that when you're doing this on the side? That's so messed up. Oh my gosh. So he basically explains that he felt like she was, obsessed. She was wanting to destroy us as a family. I went to confront her. I was scared and selfish and thought only of myself. And then I thought about you and Mom, and I came back. And he just says he wants his family back. And Henry says, we're never going to be a family again. They hold hands. Henry cries. It's so sad to see. Henry, that kid is such a good actor that plays Henry. He handles the emotions so well. So Jonathan has to go after that. So we're back at Grace's dad's house again. He's playing the piano. Grace brings up this offer of a lawyer he mentioned. He has a really good attorney. And Dad thinks it's for her to protect herself, and she explains, no, I want it for Jonathan. And Dad's trying to explain he's a monster, and he says he's not that monster. He's not. He's not the one that would kill her. And he says, okay, I'll arrange for you to meet with the lawyer. They play the piano together. She says it makes her miss Mom. They never really say what happened to the mom, so I'm very curious about that as well. We're back in jail, and we see Jonathan interacting with this other prisoner here, and the other guy is being real weird and asking Jonathan for a signature and saying he's famous or something and wants his autograph, and he's kind of holding Jonathan by the neck. Well, Jonathan kind of loses it, and they fight. And the weird thing about this scene is not just the fight, it's that we see Jonathan bite his finger so much that blood fills up his mouth. So I think they're just trying to I think they're trying to create doubt with everybody. We're seeing that Jonathan does have an aggressive side. Then we see Grace walking. Again, we see the husband with the baby behind her, so I assumed she was going to school, because that's a path that they both walk. But no, she goes to the attorney. She doesn't even notice him, that he's following her. So she goes to meet with this attorney, and basically she has to explain if he killed her. Oh, the attorney explains, if he killed her, I cannot make him innocent. I cannot make him faithful. People hire me to create muck. I can muck up the state's case so they can't meet their burden. That's what I can give you is muck. And so Grace is thinking about it. Thinking about hiring her to help. It's just such an interesting idea of a story. Like, what do you do if you're not positive he's innocent? What do you do? Do you hire this attorney to help him? Do you hire it for yourself to protect yourself? What do you do? So she's thinking about hiring it for Jonathan. So Grace's dad, we see him often at the museum. So he's at the museum again, and that lead detective goes to talk to him. Well, the detective says, I've got a feeling your daughter is hiding something. For all we know, she's an accomplice. You're her father. You're the voice of reason. You need to talk to her. And the dad stands up for her and says, my daughter has neither committed a crime nor obstructed justice. So there's really nothing else to talk about. So then we see Grace walking again. And this time, again, the husband is behind her with the baby. And this time he confronts her. It startles the crap out of her. She's not expecting it. And she's saying, this is not a good idea. And she says, this is not a good time. But he convinces her, and they end up talking. And she says, are you trying to intimidate me, Mr. Alvarez? And he says, my wife has been murdered. And she said, I'm so sorry for your loss. I find it hard to believe my husband could take a life. And then she asks him, were there other men? Were there? And he says, no, there were no other. And she says, was your wife being treated for psychological problems? And he says, it's none of your business. And then he warns her, be careful, Dr. Fraser. So I thought this was interesting. What do you think the point of that was? Why did he insist on talking to her and then give her no answers or no clarity? I don't quite follow where this part is going. I know it leads her into going to talk to the detectives again, and I guess that's the point of it, but why would he even want to talk to this woman? But even so, let's say he did want to talk to this woman. He gave her no more information. So I just didn't quite follow where they were going with this part. Unless possibly it was to just show that maybe he can't be trusted either. I just kept wondering if it had something to do with the baby. Like, since it's not his baby, he's changed his mind about raising it. I don't know. I didn't know if that was going to come up, but it never did. He held the baby, and we saw him comforting her the night before, so he seems to love that baby. We do see a flash to the husband and how he found out that Elena was having an affair. He went to her studio to find her, and he overheard them having sex. Okay, so then we go back. Grace goes straight to the police station and explains what happened. She says he's been following me, he's stalking me. And she asks them about his alibi, and have you ruled him out as a suspect? And then she says he does suffer from anger issues. And they're like, well, his wife just died. What are we talking about here? she said he had motive, opportunity, he's had access, he's hiding something, and the detective wants to know what tells her that. And she says 20 plus years of psychological training. She asks about cameras in the area, wants to know, did anybody see anything? It's got to be more than just her husband. Then things get weird. They start looking at each other. Should we tell her? I don't know. Should we tell her? They bring up this camera. She sees a video. Who does she see on the video? Herself. It's her. She's taking a walk, and it puts her right near the scene of the crime. It's about a block away from where it happened, on the night it happened, around the time it happened. And oh my gosh. And they say, how exactly did you know, Elena Alvarez? Holy cow, you guys. Chills. So many chills. She's shocked. I was shocked. Did not expect that. I didn't know where they were going with this, who they saw on camera. I did not expect it was going to be her on camera. So again, what are your thoughts on this? Does it change your opinion? Do you think she had something to do with it? Do you think they worked together? That was my only other option, is what if there's a huge twist that she's in on it too? She knew they were banging, and she ended up taking out Elena after. His story is that he went there, they had sex, they fought a little bit, he left, he came back to talk to her, and she was dead. So what if Grace was the one that went in and made her dead? Just a thought. I don't know. It would be an interesting twist, but such a good episode. Such an interesting way to end the episode. Can't wait for episode 4. I can't believe there's only 2 more left. That's so crazy. Well, 2 more after the next one I meant. But such a good series. I'm really enjoying it. I hope you guys are too. Just let me know your thoughts in the comments. Really dying to know. Really want to talk about this one with you guys. So thanks so much for watching. Check out my other videos. I'm covering all kinds of stuff right now. So check them out, and thanks so much for watching. If you're into The Mandalorian, my husband and I do a silly Mandalorian recap too, so check that out. And I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.